very pleased to be able to speak with Simon Clements, the head of retail for Commercial Bank of Kuwait here in Kuwait City. Thank you so much for speaking with us today. We are having this conversation at a time when there's great changes in the Middle East, and Kuwait seemed to be a calm in the sphere of everything that's happening in the region. How would you describe the retail banking business in Kuwait in the context of what's happening in the region as a whole?
I think Kuwait is fortunate in terms of it is relatively protected from these events that have happened elsewhere in the region. And I think that's partly because Kuwait's had a democracy for some time now. The Kuwaiti population is well looked after by the government. As you know, we're an oil-rich state, and there are many social security type benefits that are given to the citizens of the country. So from a business point of view, we haven't really seen much impact of what's been going on elsewhere in the region. We do see sometimes the effect on the stock market, where there's some uncertainty about what's happening maybe in Egypt or one of these other countries, Syria particularly now. But these tend to be very much day-to-day movement. So you see some downward movement when something happens in Syria, for example, today, but actually within a couple of days then it's recovered. So I think the impact has been quite small, particularly for a bank like Commercial Bank, who doesn't have interests outside of Kuwait in the region. Of course, banks who do, they've seen a much bigger impact on their business, particularly in those countries, obviously.
Your liabilities business has been growing tremendously, and the Middle East in general is a very strong liabilities environment in the sense that retail bankers can't do anything wrong in securing large amounts of deposits. Since the time you became head of retail for Commercial Bank, how have you been building the liabilities base, and what do you think are the drivers that are creating such a success?
Yeah, I've been here for 8 or 9 months now, and Commercial Bank has one of the largest branch networks in the country, and when it comes to liability growth, deposit gathering, having a large physical distribution network is absolutely key. So we've basically been leveraging that. We've introduced a couple of new products that have been very well received in the market.
Products would be like?
Things like the draw account that we, they're very popular in Kuwait, these draw accounts, and we were very innovative in introducing a very high daily prize, coupled with regular mega prizes, as we call them, the 100,000 KD and above prizes. Very effective marketing campaign. And that significantly helped us grow our liability book. And we attracted new money to the bank, considerable amounts of new money, from a number of our competitors, and we know that from the analysis that we've done.
Now, on the asset side of the book, you are a commercial bank when the largest retail banks in Kuwait are essentially Islamic banks, and to some extent, would it be correct to say that you don't have access to the traditional retail banking assets like mortgages in the same way that the Islamic banks have? Yeah. And so how do you play on the asset side of the business?
Well, in retail banking, from a conventional bank's viewpoint in Kuwait now, the asset side of the business is a big challenge. Why is that? Mainly because 2 or 3 years ago the central bank came in with some very strict regulations on consumer borrowing. And also that it's only the Islamic banks who are able to do asset-based financing. So, for example, a bank like Commercial Bank is not in the mortgage business, and we're not allowed to be. So that gives us a distinct disadvantage compared to the Islamic banks that are here. And as I say, until the central bank relaxes some of these regulations, which they've done for good reasons to curb consumer credit growth. But I think now is the time that we should be seeing some relaxation. Until that happens, the banks are going to struggle to grow their retail assets for sure.
Would you describe the average consumer as being highly leveraged in Kuwait?
Depends who you're talking about. Kuwaitis, the locals, yes. Expatriates, less so. And that's partly on the expatriate side because banks have quite strict lending policy to expat because of the transient nature of an expat being in a particular country for any length of time.
So you actually had a very interesting retail banking business. You are a retail banking head of a bank which is still a commercial bank, and the name is commercial bank, in a country where the Islamic banks have greater access to the asset side of the book. At the same time, you're very successful on the liability side, and that hasn't stopped you on that front. So how do you square off your positions? What does your balance sheet look like?
Well, effectively, we have quite a large corporate lending book, corporate asset book, something over 2 billion KD. And of course, our excess funds in retail go to fund the corporate asset book. And we have I think today we have the cheapest cost of funds in the country, actually.
Because of your draw accounts?
Well, because of our draw accounts and our other liability accounts. And we manage our cost of funds extremely rigorously. And we've seen our cost of funds come down over the last few months. And of course that means that we're providing our excess funding capability over our retail asset book goes to fund the corporate asset book, which increases their margins.
Which would you say that the strategy has worked well? Would you say that the bank itself is successful on the commercial front?
Definitely.
And what's the ROA of the bank as a whole as a result?
Well, you can quote me, but it's about I think about 2.6%.
What strategy in retail banking in an environment like Kuwait, with a small population, where distribution does not have to be all too clever? What is the nature of the warfare here? It's competition for retail deposits, and then what?
I think the retail banking in Kuwait is no different to retail banking elsewhere in the world. Customers demand customer service. They demand different delivery channels, all of which we have to provide. And like any retail banker will tell you, that products are a commodity, can be copied very easily by other banks, etc., etc. So for me, and I think my competitors here, the key is how can you provide high quality customer service on a sustainable basis over time. And actually none of the banks in Kuwait yet, my belief, has managed to do that.
So what does the Kuwaiti customer demand in terms of service?
What he demands is access to a branch.
So it's a very branch-based.
Yeah, there is still from a lot of customers. They're quite happy to come to a branch, and it's almost like a social occasion. They enjoy sharing a cup of tea with a branch manager or the personal banking officer, whatever. And that, although that is changing as the younger generation comes online and comes into the workforce, and we're seeing more demand for the alternate channels from this younger generation, this younger generation of customers who are demanding internet, them demanding mobile banking, convenience really.
Without being a private bank, do you find that looking after family accounts makes sense for a business for a retail banking business?
Absolutely, especially in an environment like Kuwait, because the families here are so large. If you attract one family, you get a lot of add-on customers come in as a result of that.
So
you have to manage that don't manage them as individual customers, you manage them as the family as a relationship, and this is what we're trying to do at Commercial Bank.
And how does that translate into products that you have and maybe productization itself?
Depends, again, like any other retail bank, we segment our customer base, and we have segments at every different stage of the life cycle. We've just about to launch Premier Banking. We've been a bit late with that. This is the high end of the retail market, and we try to design products based on the customer needs of the different life stage segments that they're at.
And how would you describe the relationship with the regulator? How innovative do they allow you to be, and do you get to experiment with new products?
We do, and I don't think they limit innovation per se, but they are. It is a very highly regulated environment. For every product that we want to launch, we have to go to the regulator for approval. Then follows, interaction between us and them. They ask us questions, we answer them, etc., etc. So to launch a product, in terms of speed to market, you're very much reliant on how quick the regulator goes through that process of approval, and it can take quite some time on some occasions.
And finally, how technology intensive is retail banking in Kuwait and in commercial bank?
In Kuwait, there's no doubt that MBK is the market leader. They're very technology savvy. But I think most banks are moving in the same direction. Our technology platform at Commercial Bank is quite robust, fairly flexible. We do a lot of stuff, web-based stuff, a lot of web-based development, etc., etc. We still have some way to go, I'll accept that, but I think we're moving in the right direction, and certainly using these new technologies. I think all the banks here are investing in that area.
Thank you very much for spending time.
You're welcome.